to now. You don't want to be the next Mr. Cricket.
No.
Because there's only ever going to be one Mr. Cricket. And for Supercoach, the official fantasy game of the BBL, sign-ups are now open. Mike Hussey joins us on Sports Day on this Thursday night. Mike, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good evening, Adam and Gerard. Thanks for having me on.
You like your AFL? What's a good bargain buy when it comes to the trade period in AFL football that you
Question without notice, this one. This will test you,
Mike. You caught me on the hop here. I must admit, I'm a Eagles fan, and so the first couple of years we got some unbelievable talent way back in the draft as well. So I know they turned out to be gun players, premiership players. I think Brett Heady, for example, might have been late in the draft. Maybe Dean Kemp as well, won a Norm Smith medal. So I don't know.
They're good choices.
I don't know about modern.
You were hiding them in crevices up in the Pilbara all those years ago, Mike. Dean Cox is another one. He emerged from a mine up in the Pilbara as a rookie. Even Nat Nui, they did know about Nat Nui eventually, but they got him out of. He spent some time in Western Sydney as well, Nick Nat Nui. Oh. So that's him and Dustin Martin, and yet we can't produce players. Crazy stuff.
Anyway, Mike, we do want to talk to you about cricket as the dust has settled on that Perth test. How do you feel about it now, once the emotion starts to sort of drain out a little bit?
Yeah, it was. I think it caught a lot of people by surprise, and maybe myself included. I think a lot of us expected the Indians to battle on the Perth pitch with the extra pace and bounce, but they answered all the questions, and now I've given the Aussies plenty of questions to answer, I guess. So I was just amazed at how good the Indians were, particularly young Jaiswal. I've watched him a lot at the IPL. He's an unbelievable talent. But I thought he'd be a little bit loose and a little bit sort of, a little bit sort of risque with his stroke play. I thought he'd be a bit loose outside off stump, but geez, he batted well. And even in the second, particularly in the second innings when, Pat Cummins bowled a really good spell at him, even Nathan Lyon bowled a good spell at him, and he was able just to go through the gears. He was attacking at various stages, but he was able to rein it back in and be defensive, and when he needed to, let a lot of balls go, and he showed composure beyond his years. So that was a surprise for me at how good he was. And then, we all know how good Boomer is, but they really hunted as a pack as a bowling unit and were superb. So, yeah, now that all the questions are on the Aussies, really, they've got to bounce back. And, they're a proud bunch, and I'm hopeful that they'll bounce back pretty hard in Adelaide.
Back to the bigger picture stuff. You raise the issue of the IPL. Just for a dumb footballer like myself, can you just explain how India can produce all of these players and play in the IPL, and yet people are starting to point the finger at the IPL for, I guess, the dearth of top liners coming through our country's top 11?
Yeah, it's a good question. You can't blame the IPL for Australia losing the first test, and that's a very long sort of bow there. Look, I guess having 1 billion people in your population is a bit of a head start. That helps a fair bit, and I think in the past, Indian cricket, it was all very political, and it was more about what you knew and who you knew and all that sort of stuff and where you came from. Whereas now they've really got their system worked out. Australia's always prided itself on having a really good system and structure for young players to come through and then hopefully end up in the Australian team. Well, now India are starting to sort their stuff out as well. They're getting players from all around the country, getting into the rural areas, getting the best available talent. And honestly, there is so much talent over there. It's unbelievable. Australia's had a good run being number one in the world for 20 years, the West Indies for 20 years before us. India should be the best team in the world for the next 20 years, really, as long as they don't muck it up. And look, as I said, they've got their structures in place now, so there's just a production line of quality players coming through.
And they're getting the full power of their population. As you said, it's less about the class system, etc. But can you tell me where we're at with cricket and getting the best talent in this country? Because it's like every sport's looking for the same player or very, very close to the same player in many respects. And I would have thought, given the IPL and the riches that you can now make in cricket, far outweighs the money that you make in AFL football and rugby league for that matter. So is there a breakdown in the system at all, or is it just a cyclical thing?
Well, I don't think there's a breakdown in the system. There's a lot of competing sports, as you alluded to there, here in Australia. Basketball, AFL, soccer, rugby league, tennis, golf, they're all very popular sports. And I guess as kids, being a parent myself, I encourage my kids to try a bit of everything, get out there and try everything and have a bit of fun with everything. In India, you've got a population that's, obviously X times bigger than what Australia is, and there's virtually one sport. Well, maybe a couple of others that don't really get much of a run, but cricket is literally a religion over there. It is the sport, the only sport, and so we're talking about different volumes of people being involved. So I don't necessarily think that our system is broken for cricket. I still think we're producing some really good players, but there is a lot of competition with other sports and great athletes going to different sports. It's always been a problem. I mean, AFL footy and cricket has always been a fight in the southern states in the past, and it'll probably continue to be so.
I know you've been asked about this a lot, Huss, but just about Marnus Labuschagne, and what does he need to do differently to get him back to where he was?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I actually went back and had a look at some of his highlights of some of his great innings from a few years back, and just to see if I could see anything different than what we've been seeing in the last week or so, or that certainly in the last Test match. And from a technical perspective, there's actually not a lot of difference from when he was playing really well and scoring a lot of runs compared to, from a technical perspective in the last Test match against India. The biggest difference I've noticed is just his intent to score. I mean, I think he's probably looking at sort of thinking, okay, I'm a senior player now. I've got to take responsibility. I've got to, I've got to bat time. I've got to be there for the team. I've got to soak up all this pressure. And that gets you into like a tentative defensive frame of mind of batting time and being there and being patient. Whereas when I watched some of those highlights from, a few years back, he was just confident and decisive in everything he did. Even in defence, even when he was letting the ball go, he was coming back at the bowler. He was getting into really strong positions. And I feel as though it's something that can be fixed really quickly just with a mindset shift. If he can just sort of change from that mindset of just looking to occupy the crease and be there and soak up pressure and take responsibility into whatever I do, I'm going to do it confidently and decisively and just be a little bit more positive with an intent to score, then I feel like he can turn it around really quickly.
So I want you to share with our audience, Huss, about dealing with nerves and dealing with, I guess, the doubts. You've spoken about this a bit before, where when you're going out to bat for your country and you feel like you can't score a run, how you deal with those doubts and those mental hurdles, because it feels like watching Marnus that a lot of this is actually not physical, it's actually mental.
I think it's 100% mental. And I probably went through something similar. I must admit, I struggled for about 18 months with the Aussie team. I was inconsistent. We'd had a few guys retire, great players. Initially, when I first came in, I felt just, this was great. This is exciting. It's new. It's fresh. Just get out there and play and have fun. Suddenly, these guys retired, and I sort of thought, okay, now I'm a senior player. I've got to take more responsibility. Inadvertently put more pressure on myself and started trying a bit harder. And it has a detrimental effect on your game. So after about 18 months, I just went back and had a look at all my dismissals. And I had some bad luck. I had some poor decisions and a bit of bad luck, but there was a lot of dismissals where I was tentative and I was just hanging in there and looking to survive. And if you're in that mindset, you're not going to last very long. And you do build up those doubts and the nerves build, and it's a horrible place to be. And eventually you get to a stage where you just say, you know what, stuff it. If I'm going to get dropped or I'm going to go leave the team or whatever, I want to go out my own way. I'm going to go out there playing my way. And so I just thought, whatever I do from now on, it's just going to be confident and decisive. And if it doesn't work out, well, then that doesn't work out. And as soon as you almost make that mental shift, it's amazing how you take that pressure off yourself. You just relax up and free up a little bit, and at least, go out there and just play a few shots, and hopefully it comes off.
Can I ask you about the commentary surrounding whether or not Khawaja should have taken the first ball? McSweeney took it in the second innings. Even if McSweeney said to Khawaja, I want to do it, should Khawaja have come over the top? What's the politics at play there?
I mean, possibly, but I don't buy too much into that argument. I mean, I've heard a bit of that commentary as well. I'm sure there's conversations about, you don't want to take it, I'll take it. Yep. And maybe Khawaja, the senior player, should have said, no, I'll take it. But who knows? Bumrah might have come in. He might have been a little bit stiff in the first innings, floats up a little bit of a half volley, bang, McSweeney's away. Or like what we saw in the first innings, he got away with one down the leg side early and got a couple of runs early. So it's not to say you can't score off your first ball or, you know, and things like that. So, I mean, Bumrah's a great bowler and he worked him over, but he could have worked him over in the second over or the third over. So I don't necessarily buy into those sort of arguments.
How do you feel about McSweeney opening the batting? You've someone that has opened the batting for Australia in your first test, then went down to 6. You did it, open the batting for WA. So you're the perfect person to ask that difference between batting in the sort of the middle order to batting at the top. Do you think there is a significant difference?
I do, yeah. I do think there's a difference, and it's a tough challenge for him, no question, particularly because you've never done it before in your first-class career, apart from one game against India the week before his first test. I mean, watching him play and watching him prepare, he looks like he's good player, like a good all-round player, nice technique, great temperament. The difference for him, which he found out last week, was as an opening batsman, your routines are completely different. So I just worry that we're setting him up. Are we setting him up for failure or for success? You know, we're batting him in a position that it's foreign to him. I mean, the hardest job in the game is to open the batting, particularly when you're coming up against someone like Bumrah. And then, you know, second innings when he's been on his feet for 100 and whatever many overs Australia are in the field for, 10 minutes, change, you know, get the pads on, fading light, come out there and try and survive for 20 minutes. Like the mental routines that he's been going through for his whole career are completely different. You know, he's not prepared for that at all. So that's something he's going to have to learn on the job. And that's why, I mean, it's a massive challenge for him. But, yeah, let's hope he can make those adjustments as quickly as possible. But it's a tough ask on the young player, that's for sure.
Mike, can I just ask you about the challenge between, or not the challenge, but the rivalry between Australia and England with the Ashes, obviously traditional and always every second Ashes is through the winter, so it encapsulates and gets a great audience, versus now a 5-test series against India, who, whilst we're the number one test nation, they somehow feel like they're the number one test nation. Yeah,
I mean, the Australia-India rivalry has been building for probably 15, 20 years, or maybe you could go back to, you know, the Tide Test in Madras, so maybe it's a bit longer than that. But it's just slowly been building over the years. There's been some controversies along the way as well. But certainly with India being, you know, up there with the best teams in the world, it makes that rivalry even tougher and stronger. So, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever be able to compete with India versus Pakistan. Like, that rivalry is something very unique. And it's a bit like Australia versus England. You know, that's been going for hundreds of years. So, I mean, it's a difficult one to compare.
Having lost the last 2 series, make it 3 in a row. It's a fair statement from India if in fact they do win, and it's only one loss old at the moment.
Long way to go, Gerard. I'm still remaining positive. You know, but it was a pretty emphatic start by India, and they have obviously won the last 2 here in Australia, so they'll take a lot of confidence from that. The scary thing is they can actually get stronger as well. I think Rohit Sharma can come back into the team. Mohammad Shami looks like he's regaining fitness as well. They didn't even play Jadeja or Ashwin. So it's a little bit scary to think that they could actually get stronger and be even harder to beat in the next couple.
Yeah, we're not trying to think about that, to be honest, with half the team that could come back in that makes them stronger. Hey, Mike, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about the BBl Supercoach, because I know you take it very, very seriously. And the BBL's not too far away, the WBBL Grand Final on Sunday at the MCG. When do you start looking at your side?
Oh, mate, what are you talking about? I've already been looking at it. I've been going for a few months already, planning away. But no, it's a lot of fun. I love the AFL Supercoach as well, but I love the BBL one. It's just good fun to play with your family and friends. I think there's 25 grand up for grabs too for the winner. I mean, I'm not that good at it. I won't be winning the money or anything. But yeah, no, you got to plan out. Have a good look at the fixture, because sometimes teams have like a double week game, so you can get double the amount of points. So have a bit of a look at that. But yeah, sign up. It's free. Have a bit of fun. It makes you tune into the Big Bash, but you watch the game a little bit differently as well. You'll be watching some of your favourite players and the players that you sort of have picked in your team.
You got a value pick for us?
Oh, I mean, Stoinis is underpriced. Yeah. He's very cheap. Yeah. But I've been saying that for a few years and he hasn't been delivering. So let's hope this year he can do the job. But yeah, I don't know. Matt Short's a hard one because he's like your number one player in the comp, but he's so expensive. So can you afford to get him in? I don't know.
Have you got Jake Fraser-McGurk in your team?
Not at the moment. I'm a bit concerned about his form and expectation, but I reckon he might slide in there before the season starts.
Very good. Mike, as always, it's great talking cricket with you. I'm sure we'll do it again at some point over the course of the summer.
No worries, boys. Have a great evening. Thanks for having me on.